Hello and welcome back guys to another Alpha Math video. In this lesson, we'll be focusing on the topic quadratic equations. Alright, so for our first example, let's have a look. X squared minus 4 equal to 0. This is a quadratic equation because we have the x squared component over there. Okay, and this means that we'll have two solutions, or we'll end up with two solutions. Right, now to find these two solutions, we can solve x by first factorizing the expression and then setting each bracket equal to 0. So let's factorize this by using difference of squares. X minus 2 and x plus 2. And now you can solve x by equating each bracket to 0. Alright, so if x minus 2 is equal to 0, then x is equal to 2. And if x plus 2 is equal to 0, then that must mean that x is equal to negative 2. Alright, so there's our two solutions. X is equal to 2 and x is equal to negative 2. Now it might even be useful to think of this as a function, okay? Where x squared is a parabola function, the minus 4 indicates that it goes 4 units down. So it should have a y-intercept here at negative 4. Then the solutions 2 and negative 2 is actually the x-intercepts of the function or the roots of the function. Okay, so there you go. Sometimes it's helpful to think of these equations, these quadratic equations, as functions. Okay, so that's it for our first question. Let's move on. Okay, now question B over here asks us to solve the equation x squared plus 5x plus 6 equal to 0. For this equation, because we have a trinomial now, not like the previous one, here I'd like you first to find the factors of the constant term in that trinomial. Okay, so the factors of 6 would be 6 and 1, but also 2 and 3. 6 times 1 is 6, 3 times 2 also gives us 6. Now these pairs of factors should always add to this middle term. Right, now 6 plus 1 is going to give us 7 and 3 plus 2 is going to give us 5. So we'll use the factors 3 and 2. Okay, so I'll write the solution over here. X plus 3 and x plus 2. Okay, notice when you go ahead and multiply with this brackets, you should end up with that original expression. Right, now let's go ahead and solve this further by setting each bracket equal to 0. We say x plus 3 has to be equal to 0, and therefore x is equal to negative 3, or if x plus 2 is equal to 0, then it means that x is equal to negative 2. So therefore x is equal to 3 or x is equal to negative 2. Now we could also represent this function on a Cartesian plane. X squared means it's going to be a parabola. So a parabola that looks something like this, okay, with a y-intercept of 6. Now this parabola will have x-intercepts at negative 3 and at negative 2. So this diagram represents both the question as well as the solutions. Okay, we can now move on to our third example. Right, now for our third quadratic equation, here we have x squared minus 3x is equal to 10. Right, so the first thing you need to do is subtract 10 on both sides, because you need to have this entire expression equal to 0. Okay, because now when you go ahead and factorize, you will set each bracket equal to 0. Alright, so we'll have x's in the first position of each bracket, and then we know that our signs will be different because the constant is negative. So that means when you multiply these two outer terms, this one with that one, we should end up with a negative expression. Okay, because positive times a negative is a negative. So that's how I know the signs must be different. But also beyond that, let's first find the factors of 10. Okay, I'll write them over here. 10 and 1, 2 and 5. 10 times 1 is 10, and 5 times 2 is also 10. Okay, we'll choose the factors 5 and 2 because these factors would subtract in order to get negative 3. In fact, the 2 will be positive and the 5 will be negative. because 2 minus 5 is equal to negative 3. So just make sure you're always getting this middle term over here. Okay, now that you know you factorized it correctly, go ahead and write your solutions. So for our first bracket, x plus 2, we know that x will be equal to negative 2. And for the bracket x minus 5, we know that x will be equal to 5. Okay, and these are our two answers. Again, you can try and represent this on a Cartesian plane. This will again be a parabola type of graph because of our x squared term. Then also the minus 3x means that the graph will move slightly to the right. And so our curve will look something like this with an x-intercept at negative 2 and another x-intercept at 5. Okay, and I guess you could also fill in the y-intercept. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, moving on to question number 4. For this question, you'll first need to distribute the x inside with the bracket. So that becomes x times 8, which is 8x. And also x times x, which is x squared. So negative x squared. And then we have the 15 over here on this side. Now let's rearrange this with our x squared term in front. We'll have positive 8x and subtract 15 on both sides. So we get minus 15. Okay, now let's multiply everything with a negative, like multiply this whole expression with negative 1, such that our x squared term is positive. And that's very important. Your x squared term should always be positive. Okay, so that means the signs of everything else changes the moment you multiply by that negative. Okay, let's go ahead and factorize now. We need to find the factors of 15. Okay, so 15 times 1. Also 3 times 5. Okay, we'll go with 3 and 5 because they add up to 8. And remember, our signs have to be the same since there's a positive constant. Okay, a positive constant means that both signs will have the same symbol. So like minus 3, minus 5. Okay, when you multiply two negative numbers, it gives you a positive outcome. Okay, and also these numbers, negative 3 and negative 5, should add up to negative 8. That's why I'm choosing both of them on negative instead of both of them being positive. Right, so now let's solve each bracket by simply making them equal to 0. Here we should find out that x is equal to 3 or x is equal to 5. Right, so we conclude that our solutions for this equation is 3 and 5. Okay, we won't represent this on a graph because from here on out, the equations and functions become a little more complex than your standard and ordinary parabola graph. In any case, question number 5, or question E. This one says x plus 1 is equal to 12 divided by x. Right, let's have a look. Whenever you're faced with fraction type of equations, I want you to go ahead and multiply by the LCD, the lowest common denominator, which in this case is just x. Okay, so we're going to multiply both our left hand side and our right hand side. So when you multiply x by 1, that gives us x squared. When you multiply 1 by x, that gives us positive 1x. And when you multiply 12 divided by x, then this x that you're multiplying with will cancel with the denominator x. And you're actually just left with a 12. Okay, let's rewrite this equation by bringing the 12 over to the left-hand side. Now, factorize this equation by first using the factors of 12 that are going to subtract to give us positive 1. Okay, so 12 has the factors 12 and 1, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Now, when you're subtracting these factors, 12 and 1 will give you 11, 6 and 2 is going to give you 4, 4 and 3 is going to give you 1. And that's the factors we need. So we'll write over here x plus 4 and x minus 3. Remember, our signs are different because the constant term is a negative, so it must be different. Positive times a negative is negative. And now we can go ahead and write our final solutions, which is going to be x equal to -4 for our first bracket and x equal to +3 for our second bracket. Okay, -4 and 3 are the solutions for this equation. Okay, moving on. Right, now here you can see the questions become a little harder because here we have a number in front of the x squared term, and this cannot be factored out. Okay, you can't take it out as a common factor because 2 cannot divide into 13, nor can it divide into 15. Okay, so we're going to work with this a little differently to what we did with the rest. First, we're going to multiply the coefficient of our x squared term with the constant term. Okay, so 2 times 15 is equal to 30. Now, we'll use the factors of 30 to give us 13. Remember, these factors of 30 need to add to 13. Okay, because this sign in front of the constant, as you can see, is a positive 15. Right, so let's write out all the factors of 30. That's going to be 30 and 1, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. So I'm sure you already spotted the factors that we're going to need. It's 10 and 3. Okay, now this is what we're going to do. We're going to break up that middle term, which is 13x. We're going to break up that term as 10x plus 3x. Okay, everything else will be written as normal. The 2x squared will stay, the plus 15 and equal to 0, that will all stay. Right, now let's factorize the first two terms and then also the last two terms. So take out 2x as a common factor for our first two terms. This is going to leave us with x plus 5. Then factor out a common factor for the last two terms, which is 3. 3 goes into 3x and 3 goes into 15. In fact, it goes into 15 5 times. So again, we have the factors x plus 5. Right, now take out your common bracket as a common factor. Okay, so let's do this over here. We'll take out x plus 5 as a common bracket, and then that leaves me with the 2x plus 3. So in your next bracket, you'll write 2x plus 3. Okay, now what we can do is set each bracket equal to 0 and then solve the equation from there. So if x plus 5 is equal to 0, then this means that x is equal to -5. Alright, and if 2x plus 3 is equal to 0, then it means that 2x is equal to -3 and x is equal to -3 divided by 2. So your answers here is -5 and -3/2. These are your final solutions for the original equation, 2x squared plus 13x plus 15 equal to 0. Okay, I do want to practice two more questions with you. Let's have a look at question G. Alright, so we have 3x minus 5 equal to 12. Let's multiply out with the x first of all. So this gives us 3x squared minus 5x. Let's carry the 12 to the other side, so it's minus 12. Okay, now let's factorize the same way by multiplying the 3 with the 12. And 3 times 12 is 36. Now let's write out the factors for 36. Okay, so it's 1 and 36, it's 2 and 18, that's 3 and 12, that's 4 and 9, and it's also 6 and 6. Okay, so here's quite a few factors. Remember, these factors need to subtract in order to give us -5. Subtract in order to give us -5. Okay, if we have a look at 4 and 9, these factors, first of all, they multiply to 36, but also they subtract to give us -5. right? Positive 4 minus 9 is equal to negative 5. So we're going to break up the negative 5x as negative 9x plus 4. Okay, you see what I'm doing there with that middle term? Similar to what we did with the previous one. Now let's just write everything else as per usual. We don't change anything. Now what you want to go ahead and do is factorize these two terms and also the last two terms. Okay, so take out 3x as a common factor. This leaves us with x minus 3. Then factor out 4 as a common factor for your next two terms. And that also leaves you with x minus 3. Okay, now we need to factorize this common bracket, x minus 3. And let's take that out. So it leaves us with 3x plus 4. And that's what we write down in our second bracket. 3x plus 4. Again, setting these brackets each equal to 0 should give us answers as x equal to 3 and x equal to negative 4 over 3. Okay, once you set each bracket equal to 0 and solve x, you should find these answers. Okay, so that would be your final answers for the original equation. Right, now let's have a look at our last equation. So, sadly for this question, we can't really find factors that is going to give us a solution. I guess you could still try by multiplying the 3 with the 5 to give you 15, but then none of the factors of 15 would actually produce negative 1 as a solution, right? So this is not going to work if you factorize it. Instead, what we'll do to solve this equation, we'll go ahead and make use of the quadratic formula. So let me write that over here. The quadratic formula is x equal to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4a times c divided by 2a. Now in this formula, we should remember that a's value is the number in front of x squared, so it's your coefficient of the x squared term. Then b's value is the number in front of x, again the coefficient of x, and c's value would be the constant, the term that doesn't have the x. So let's go ahead and substitute these values now. Okay, we'll say x is equal to negative, I'm just going to put in all the brackets over here. And now I'm going to go ahead and substitute our values inside with each of the brackets. So negative 1 is replaced with b, and 3 is replaced with the a, and negative 5 is replaced with c's value. Okay, so this negative 1 times negative 1 should give us a positive 1 plus minus. Also, this negative 1 squared should give us positive 1. And this negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. The negative 12 times the negative 5 should give us positive 60. Right, we're going to add that up. 2 times 3 should be 6. So at the bottom we have 6. Okay, so our answer is x is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 61 divided by 6. Okay, so there's two solutions here. The first solution, let's just scroll down. The first solution will be x equal to 1 plus the square root of 61 divided by 6. And the second solution would be x equal to 1 minus the square root of 61 divided by 6. So you could punch this into your calculator to get some surd or decimal answer, but I'm more than happy with this being my solution. So we'll just stick to this and call it a day. Okay, and that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.